Hi, hope you're having a great Sunday. Well, today I want to talk about one little lifestyle change. If we learn this one little lifestyle change, we will never have to fad diet again. We don't have to get on restrictive diets. We don't need to do things that we don't like. We can live a normal life like we lived when we were children. While we were growing up, we ate what we wanted, we played, we were active, we did different activities. We never had to think about our diets, and yet we were healthy, we had the right amount of energy. Most of us were not obese and things were just perfect. Now today we're living in a health-obsessed world where constantly we're building a bad relationship with food. People are talking about which foods are good for us, which foods are bad for us, which foods make us fat, and it isn't really about that. It's not about those kind of foods. The very foods that we made enemies today, most of those foods, we've grown up on them in moderation. Our parents gave us different things to eat and we were just fine. What I want to talk about is psychological deprivation. This is a huge issue. When we restrict ourselves constantly from different foods, we want to go out for lunches and dinners with our friends and family, but we're constantly stressed about what we're going to choose from the menu, what we're going to eat. We keep asking the waiters 10 questions about the kind of oil they use, and it's just become a little too much. And all that anxiety and all that stress is basically leading to hormonal disruption in your body. And that is the number one reason why health-obsessed people who have bad relationships with food, people who starve themselves, who have psychological deprivation of certain foods and liquids, never seem to achieve their results. And even if they start to achieve it, they're constantly depressed. They start aging rapidly. They're constantly snappy, frustrated, and all of those issues. Health doesn't have to be that difficult. What we're going to learn today is something as simple as food extraction. Whenever we start trying to make our lives complicated, when we start looking for complication in the form of pills, nutraceuticals, diets, exercise programs, we need to take one step back and remind ourselves of the intelligence and brilliance of the human body. This body has an intelligence which allows us to do everything that we need to do as long as we don't push the human body out of its set points. You see, the human body is resilient. We all have set points, and you can stretch that set point. You can really stretch it. But once you cross it, that's when all disease comes in, chronic lifestyle disorders and all of those things. So like anything in life, we don't push it. We respect it, okay? We use it, but we do not abuse it, and we do not push it. It's like you push anything in life and you eventually lose it, including your health. But as human beings, we tend to take our health for granted because we wake up every day, no matter what we eat, we drink, we sacrifice our sleep. We wake up the next day and we wake up the next day, so we think it's okay. We take the human body for granted so we don't prioritize our health. We don't prioritize our sleep, our meal times, our exercise, because life's given us another day of life, so we take it for granted until we're hit with chronic disease, until we're hit with death, or all of these things. That's the only time most of us wake up to start changing. Psychological deprivation linked with fad diets. A fad diet, a piece of paper that tells you don't eat this food in order to be healthy. It doesn't tell you that change your lifestyle instead of depriving yourself so that you can be healthy. So today's world is all about give up gluten, give up milk, stop this, stop that. Well, you can do all of that stuff. You're going to be psychologically deprived. Number two is you're not going to solve the root cause of your problem because you've not changed your behavior. How many foods will you give up to lose weight? How many foods will you give up in order to cure your disease or heal your disease? And you may have to do that in certain cases while your body heals, but if you are not changing your behavior or your lifestyle to address the root cause of why you keep putting on weight, because you're overeating. If you're overeating, no amount of cutting out different foods from your diet is going to solve your problem long term. If you're eating the wrong foods that don't support your diabetes, your cancer, your thyroid, no amount of restricting yourself from that is going to cure your disease or prevent it from coming back unless you make behavioral changes and lifestyle changes that prevents the root cause of that problem from cropping up again. So when you do a fad diet, right then you know that you are emotionally in the wrong mindset. You are trying to achieve something with desperation. So you're looking for shortcuts, you're looking for quick fixes because you need to achieve something very, very quickly to support a goal which is not dependent on your personal goal. That goal is tied into what society thinks of you, what people think of you, how you're being judged, the way you wear your clothes, and all of those things. We know for the longest time that fad diets will give you short-term results, but they are not sustainable. Along with the weight, you will lose your health. Deficiencies of minerals. What kind of a diet tells you not to eat fruits, when fruits are your main source of vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes? So people get real. There are no shortcuts. Now, of course, let's take, for example, someone who's obese, someone who has a bad lifestyle. All of a sudden, they take up a fad diet and they restrict themselves from certain things. Obviously, they will start losing weight. You don't get a prize for that just because they start losing weight. Number one, they were already obese. You make one change, even one little change, you'll start losing weight. But all of a sudden, everyone wakes up and thinks that, oh, that person lost weight on that program, which means it's going to work for me. But it doesn't have to work for you. That person had a different lifestyle. He was overeating, eating the wrong foods. And that's why the moment they moved onto a plan that told them to eat a little less, they started losing weight. But we have the herd mentality. We try to follow everyone, copy everyone without understanding that every human being is individual and unique. What works for you doesn't have to work for someone else. What works for your child doesn't have to work for someone else's child. So parents have to stop comparing children, what someone else's mom is feeding their kid, and you try to do that and your child doesn't like it, and then you force feed your child. This is ridiculous behavior. And this behavior is seen in educated population and in affluent society like today. Common sense is what we need. Coming back to fad diets, what I'm going to talk today about is pleasure. I'm going to talk about pleasure, I'm going to talk about sex, and I'm going to talk about food extraction. If you can understand this, number one, understand. Understanding is useless without implementation. Next, you implement. You practice, you can practice. The one thing that I promise you, and I promise you this, the one thing I guarantee you is when you start doing this, number one, you are going to find that your appetite falls, your cravings reduce. You automatically start eating less food. You automatically start eating the right foods without someone having to tell you to eat healthy and natural foods. Your body will start asking you for that. Number four, you will no longer feel psychologically deprived. You will start to enjoy your desserts. You will start to enjoy your outside meals with your friends when it's done in moderation. You will no longer see food as an enemy. You will improve the relationship of food and yourself. And when you can master this one little lifestyle which doesn't cost you any money, the funny thing is the things that don't cost you money and really work requires effort and discipline. And most human beings are not willing to do that. And then they complain about the price that they have to pay for food and treatments and everything else. You know, this is what we call as the hypocrisy of human beings. The hypocrisy of human beings. It's as simple as that. You'll have people in clubs and restaurants throwing money on daily coffees, on bottles of vodkas and all of that stuff. And when it comes to their health, they expect everything to work the way they want it to work. They don't want it to cost money. They don't want to make changes. They don't want to put discipline in your life. Well, here's the ugly truth. Anyone who promises you a quick fix, or a program where you don't have to exercise, a program where you don't have to, monitor the amount of food that you eat, they don't care about your health. Health is one simple definition. It is not the absence of disease. Health is the ability to keep all your defense mechanisms and your cells working in harmony with one another. When that happens, your health is already taken care of. You have already invested in prevention and possible healing. So let's start straight away with the way we eat food. It doesn't matter if you're eating organic food, non-organic food, or whatever it is. The first step is how you eat food. It doesn't matter what you eat. What matters is how your body digests, assimilates, and absorbs what you eat. The complete process of digestion. Then comes everything else. First you focus on digestion. Then you focus on exercise, on the kind of diet that you need, and everything else. Because if you don't have the right digestion, your food means nothing. Your food is information to your genes. Your food dictates how your cells will behave. Your food dictates how your hormones will communicate and behave and basically protect you along with your immune system in the body. So if you have the right quality of food reaching every cell in your body, we have the right behavior. You have the wrong quality of food, or even the right quality of food, but you're not digesting and assimilating it. All of us know people who are health obsessed. They're eating seeds and nuts and salads all through the day, but yet they're sick, yet they look older than they should. They're weak, they're constantly depressed. Why? They're eating healthy food. What's wrong? Because it's not about what they eat. It's about how their body is assimilating and digesting and absorbing what they eat. Now today, I want to talk about food extraction and pleasure. Now, pleasure is a very important word for human beings to understand. Now, you can understand it in the perverted way, or you can understand it in the logical way. There is a big difference between pleasure and excitement. We're going to talk about that in a minute. First, coming back to pleasure. Every human being is hardwired for pleasure, to and seek pleasure, and to avoid pain. When I say pleasure, pleasure can come in the forms of respectful sex and lovemaking. It can come in the form of relationships, love, appreciations, bondings, children, your work. Your work can give you pleasure. Good food can give you pleasure. The social circle can give you pleasure. This is pleasure. We are hardwired to find pleasure. And we are hardwired to do anything to avoid pain. So when pain comes into our life, the first thing that every human being wants to do is to find ways to avoid it. So from a painkiller to using coping mechanisms to cope with a bad day or a bad relationship, or finding vices like alcohol, drugs, over-socializing, shopping, Netflix binging, social media binging. These are coping mechanisms to make you feel better because you want to avoid pain. So human beings are hardwired to find pleasure and to avoid pain. So now pleasure becomes an integral part of our life. When it comes to your food, your job when it comes to your food is to start chewing. Chewing does two things. It is so important, and every child needs to learn this. Every human being needs to know this before they get onto a fancy health plan. Fancy health plans, fancy diet plans, fancy supplements are useless if we don't learn the basics and the foundation of the human body and digest it. When you start chewing your food, you produce saliva. If you do not chew your food and you're a fast eater, you do not produce the right amount of saliva. Saliva communicates to your digestive system to start producing enzymes to help you break down the food that you eat. In fact, the digestion of fats and carbohydrates starts in the mouth when your food mixes with saliva through a process called chewing. So we chew, we mash our food, we break it down with our teeth, it mixes with our saliva. But now our stomachs have already been sent a communication signal to produce the enzymes to break down protein and carbohydrates and the right amount of hydrochloric acid. Your stomach needs to be acidic when you're eating your meals. So now you send down beautifully mashed and beautifully chewed food in the right form to your stomach. There's the right amount of acid produced, the right amount of enzymes produced by your pancreas. It beautifully digests your carbohydrates into energy, your proteins into amino acids, goes down into your small intestine, into your gut, where your gut beautifully absorbs the vitamins, the minerals, the proteins, and everything it needs into your blood. And your blood carries all of this to the trillions of cells in the human body. This is a perfectly working digestive system. In our gut, we have the microbiome, the friendly bacteria that helps us further digest and absorb all of these foods into our blood. Now, what happens is, while we're chewing, it's not just about chewing. You need to get pleasure from your food. Now, you need to understand this. For that, I am going to, so if you have kids watching this, it's your decision to get your kids out of this program, because I am going to talk about sex right now. Okay. The best analogy to understand extracting pleasure from your food is understanding sex. Now, when a man gets aroused or when a woman gets aroused, how do we get aroused? There is blood flow. Okay, the brain gets a signal of pleasure. When there is a signal of pleasure that reaches the receptors in the brain, there is blood flow that goes to the penis of a man or the clitoris of a woman. Basically, there is increased blood flow to the reproductive sex organs of the man and the woman. Okay? We have sex or we make love. It ends up with a feeling of pleasure. The entire event is over. Your oxytocin is boosted. You feel happy. Your stress levels, your cortisol, your blood pressure, everything is balanced in your body. You feel good. Your cells are working in harmony with each other. Everything started off with a signal of pleasure. Without that pleasure, you would not be able to make love. You would not be able to have respectful and good sex that ends in pleasure, in completion. So So for example, when it's hurried through, when you have hurried sex, there's no foreplay, all of that stuff, it usually results in one partner feeling dissatisfied or unsatisfied, or both partners feeling dissatisfied or unsatisfied, because pleasure, the entire event of pleasure, was not completed in the brain. You need to understand that everything happens in the brain. So when the event is completely over the right way, both partners feel satisfied. Now let's move straight to food. When we extract pleasure from the food that we eat, it is so important for you to learn to extract pleasure from the food that you eat. The moment your brain gets the signal of pleasure from the food that you eat, your digestion is boosted. We have the same blood flow, but now it's not going to your clitoris or your penis, it is going to your digestive system. Your digestive system needs blood flow in order to complete digestion, assimilation, extraction of all the vitamins and minerals from your food, and then absorption. So you see, the more blood flow that you have, so if you're eating on the go, you're walking and eating, you're talking and eating, you're eating too quickly, your brain never gets that signal of pleasure, which is why two things happen. Number one, we don't feel satisfied with the meal that we ate. A few hours later or a few minutes later, we're still hungry because your cells are still screaming for nutrition and for energy. Because you see, everything works with signaling. If your brain got that signal of pleasure after your meal, it stops asking you for more food. There's a signal that's sent to your brain saying, I've got all the energy I need, now let me complete my digestion, extraction, absorption, assimilation. So everything works on signaling. But over-smart human beings think that, oh, we'll save some time, we'll have working meetings, we'll be on the phone, we'll watch TV, and we'll eat. Your meal is a sacred time. You chew your food with awareness. Now, to get pleasure from your food, you need to add awareness. When there is awareness, there is smell. You smell your food, you already start signaling pleasure to the brain. You smell your food. Even when you think of good food, you get pleasure in your brain. Why? Because there is some amount of emotional sensation working with it. So you need to be so into your food. You extract fragrance from it. You extract pleasure through chewing. When you chew and you're mindful with your food, you can taste that spice. You can taste that vegetable. You can taste that meat or whatever it is, the flavor. So many people talk about being foodies. Most foodies don't even understand food. They're just overeating. A foodie needs to extract pleasure from their food. They need to enjoy. They don't need big portions of food. You eat slow. People talk about food orgasms. Well, like most human orgasms, most people wouldn't have even met a proper food orgasm. A food orgasm will happen when you have extracted complete pleasure from your food, which means you are satisfied. You need to end every meal with a feeling of complete satisfaction, not fullness. Don't look for fullness, because when your brain is satisfied, you are automatically full. You be satisfied with the food that you eat. Now there's a beautiful thing that happens. Your brain gets the signal of pleasure, it stops asking you for food. So you stop eating. All the blood flow goes towards your digestive system, and you beautifully digest whatever you ate, be it an ice cream, be it a samosa, be it a bowl of salad, or whatever it is. Now, of course, my message is not that you just go start eating all the crap food. This is an example not to eat foods with guilt. Sometimes you feel like having a samosa, you feel like having a dessert, and there's so much of chaos in your heart and in your mind with guilt. Just eat it, extract pleasure from it, chew it, break it down. It will not cause a problem to your health or your weight at all. But you mix in all the guilt and all the cortisol with it, and you will have a problem with that food. So you must understand that extracting pleasure is important. Now, if we have a conversation really quickly and you're left feeling unsatisfied because the conversation wasn't full, but you have a long, beautiful conversation with a friend or a loved one or your mom or dad, you get a signal of pleasure and you feel satisfied. So you see, pleasure and satisfaction go hand in hand. And the same thing with food. Now, junk food. People will say, oh, I extract pleasure from junk food. No, you extract excitement. Junk food is designed to excite your brain. Your neurotransmitters, the best neuroexciters are salt, MSG, sugar, refined carbs, and a whole load of chemicals that food companies and food lobbies and junk food companies spend millions of dollars every year to basically master that perfect combination of sugar, salt, and carbs, which works as a neuroexciter. You see, pleasure and excitement is completely different. There can be something that excites me right now, but does it result in pleasure? It may or it may not. So junk food, you do not derive pleasure. You derive excitement, and that's how they addict your young children. That's how they addict you. That's how they addict your parents who had a clean life until we started feeding them processed and packaged foods, and then they can't get off it today. Their neurotransmitters are excited. There is no pleasure, which is why after having junk food and sugar foods, within half an hour to 45 minutes, you will be hungry again. You should be full. You just ate something, but why are you hungry? Because the process never got completed. You never got full pleasure. Your cells are still screaming out for more and more nutrition. This is the difference. So you need to understand it. So like I tell people, make love to your food. Foreplay with your food. You chew your food. You break it down. You tongue it. You feel it with your tongue. You mash it. You lick it. You do whatever you want until you've completely, made it soft, and then you swallow. But the whole idea is basically chewing your food and extracting pleasure. If you extract pleasure, I promise you, all of us know people who eat what they want and they never get fat, or some of them are fat, but they have no health problems. They have a different mindset. They truly enjoy their food. They extract pleasure from their food. It's a different thing. They may not care about how they look. They don't care about what people say, but they are still healthy because they extracted pleasure and their bodies help them break down all that food beautifully. So that's the beauty, and that's the whole beauty of the extraction process. You need to think food, you need to think extraction. How much of nutrition am I able to extract from the food that I eat? Even if it's a samosa, even if it's a piece of chocolate, if you've decided to eat it, okay, forget about the guilt, you've decided to eat it. How much can you extract from that piece of chocolate? There is a little bit of goodness in. There is a little bit of goodness in a samosa as well. How much can you extract? How much of goodness can you extract from that? So that's what I want to tell you. You have to find pleasure in the food that you eat, not just that, in everything that you do in life. If you don't get pleasure, okay, you feel dissatisfied. If you feel dissatisfied, you have stress, you have anxiety. So the end word is fulfillment. Is your food fulfilling you? Even if it's any kind of food, you slow down and you chew and you extract. And when you know that you've got pleasure from your food, you know that that meal was perfect and it was the right meal for you. So at meal times, yes, we have to keep our phones away. Better not to talk to people. Don't watch TV. Don't have working lunches. Don't do any of that. Keep that 15 to 20 minutes as a sacred time to really extract pleasure from your food. Now, the first few days that you do this, you'll find that you can't even finish the food on your plate because you've got pleasure, your body shut down its appetite. You need less food when you eat with awareness and you extract pleasure from your food. You need less food. You don't need more. We need more when we're eating mindlessly. We know because we're eating so fast and we're still looking for pleasure. So we eat more and more and more thinking we're finally going to find pleasure from that food. By then we've overeaten, we've got more calories, produced more acids, run out of our digestive enzymes in the body, and that's the little problem that we have. It's a huge problem. So I hope you understand this one little simple lifestyle change. Extraction. How much can you extract from the food that you eat? How can you enhance your extraction? Your extraction, no distractions during your meals. Your sacred time. You start your meals by blessing your food, offering gratitude, whatever it is that you want to do. Then you chew, you chew, you chew. You make love to your food. You chew, you chew. You extract. You find that pleasure. And then you find that in a day, you don't need that much of food anymore. You do not need that much of food anymore. You find 4 to 5 hours of gap between your meals automatically. So you don't have to really worry about that anymore. You do this and you will never have to diet again. I promise you this. I guarantee you this. Comes with a little bit of practice. Start off with one meal. Then start off with the second, then get one day right, then get 2, then 3, then 4, and then it becomes a habit. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of your subconscious mind, and you will enjoy every food that comes your way, and your body will tell you which foods to enjoy and which foods not to eat. You see, you use something called intuition. Our intuition, every human being, every child has intuition that tells us what to stay away from, what to be careful of, but today our intuition is clouded with layers of fear, complications, stress, and everything else. You remove these layers, and your body will tell you exactly how you need to live your life and what you need to be careful of. Have a great Sunday, everyone. Until next time, eat smart, move more, sleep right, and breathe deep.